Raker Prime was silent in the aftermath of war. The once breathing planet had been turned to a dead zone, gray skies, black soil, and fractured concrete stretching across miles. From the air, the land looked like rusted iron buried beneath clouds of smoke. The final zero orbital strike had come 40 hours ago. No further transmissions. No survivors confirmed. No rescue requests permitted. The War Council declared it closed territory. Dr. Adrian Voss landed anyway. His shuttle came down hard through the heavy dust, stabilizers whining as it adjusted for uneven terrain. As the craft settled on a half-ruined outpost platform, he stayed seated in the cockpit, eyes fixed on the static scrolling across the life-form scanner. The pulse was faint, inconsistent, but it wasn't a false alarm. It was real. Someone was still alive out there. Adrian released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands hovered over the controls, his mind circling the same thought over and over. This is illegal. He wasn't military anymore. Hadn't been since the Mars evac zone collapse 4 years ago. Now he served under civilian contract with the Outer Core Trauma Response Unit. Strictly limited to neutral operations, strictly barred from entering conflict zones without council approval. Rushing into a forbidden area to help an enemy combatant was enough to have his license revoked and be labeled a sympathizer. In the worst case, it could get him killed. But something about the signal wouldn't let him ignore it. He stood up slowly and walked to the rear of the shuttle. His gear was already prepared. Compact field medkit, neural stabilizer pack, modular scanner, exo-armor boots, low-cal impact pistol. He strapped them on with practice speed, every movement mechanical efficient. Adrian wasn't new to crisis zones. He had served in frontline field hospitals during the Torren Rift siege, treated dying soldiers in collapsed domes while mortar fire lit the sky above. He had lost patients, lost friends, and nearly lost his mind once. But what still woke him at night wasn't the noise or the chaos. It was the silence after. The patients who didn't get help because protocol said not to go. He wasn't going to let that happen again. Not this time. The shuttle door opened with a sharp hiss, letting in dry, acrid air. Adrian stepped out onto scorched earth. The terrain reeked of ozone and ash. Burned alloy and charred synth skin clung to shattered weaponry strewn across the site. He walked briskly, stepping over fragments of armor plating and what was left of drone wreckage. The signal was moving in and out, probably from under debris or inside a collapsed structure. He narrowed the scan and pushed forward. 20 meters away, a section of reinforced ferrocrete had folded in on itself. Cracks lined the surface like veins, and scorched symbols of the Zero Order were still visible along the base. A battlefield command post, obliterated. He crouched beside a half-buried panel and ran a focus scan. There, beneath the collapsed slabs, encased in twisted framework, was a humanoid figure. Tall, unmoving, but warm. Alive. Adrian exhaled sharply and began clearing debris with precise cuts from his laser scalpel. The metal groaned as he pried it away, sweat running down his back despite the cooling mesh in his suit. Then he saw her. Kael'Vira. The name came later, but the sight of her stopped him cold. Her body was pinned under one of the collapsed support beams. She was a Zero warrior. He recognized the armor pattern immediately. Not just infantry, she was high caste. A warden, legendary among her kind. Her chest rose faintly with each shallow breath. Her eyes were closed, brow furrowed in pain. Her lips were cracked. Blood had dried along her cheek and neck. Her skin, violet gray and marked by ceremonial lines, was coated in a layer of dust and ash. She looked more like a discarded statue than a person. Adrian dropped to one knee. Still alive, he whispered. He checked for a pulse manually. Weak but present. A flicker of life in an otherwise silent graveyard. Okay, he muttered, adjusting the scanner. No spine sever, no weight. Lumbar region. Severe trauma. Internal bleeding. Full lower body paralysis likely. He hesitated. His eyes locked on her face. Her expression was stiff with pain. Her breathing labored. But it wasn't just injury he saw. It was humiliation. Her people didn't believe in rescue. If a warden fell, she was expected to die with honor. This one had survived, barely, and been abandoned. It didn't sit right with him. Adrian activated his emergency hover stretcher. As the device unfolded and hovered beside her, he injected a mild neurosedative to ease the pain. Her eyelids twitched. Then her eyes opened. Their gazes met. She said nothing, but her eyes spoke of confusion, resistance, even hostility. "You're not dead," Adrian said calmly. "And I'm not leaving you here." Her mouth moved slightly. Why? He knew the question wasn't rhetorical. Because no one else came. He reached down, placed his hands beneath her arms, and carefully lifted her torso free of the wreckage. She groaned, her head pressing back against the stretcher cushion. Her limbs didn't respond. Her fingers curled slightly, but couldn't close. As he secured her into the stretcher's frame, Calvira looked straight at him again. "You'll be executed for this," she rasped. Adrian didn't answer. The stretcher began hovering beside him as he turned back toward the shuttle. He didn't look back until they were inside and the hatch sealed. Inside the cramped med bay, Adrian stripped away the remains of her armor piece by piece. Beneath it, deep plasma burns ran along her lower back. The spinal conduit had been ruptured at 2 points. Someone had hit her with intent. This wasn't stray fire. He shook his head. "They did this to you." She didn't respond. Her gaze remained fixed on the ceiling, jaw tight. He worked through the next hour with silent focus. Applied coagulant foam, sealed ruptured tissue, replaced a damaged organ capsule with a temporary biofilter. Throughout, she watched him, sometimes with suspicion, sometimes with exhaustion, never with gratitude. She didn't trust him. Not yet. And honestly, he didn't blame her. When the worst was done, he placed a thermal wrap over her body and adjusted the monitor above her. "I stabilized you," he said. "You'll live, but you won't be able to walk again. Not without advanced augmentation. Even then, it's a long shot." Still, no reaction. He pulled off his gloves and leaned against the counter. "What's your name?" he asked. A pause. Then Calvera. Adrian nodded slowly. "I'm Dr. Adrian Voss. I used to fix people in war zones. Now, I mostly get ignored by bureaucrats." Her eyes flicked toward him. "Why break your laws for me?" Adrian's tone didn't change. "Because someone had to." For a brief second, her face twitched. Not with emotion, with fatigue. She was at her limit. Adrian turned off the overhead lights and left only the med panel glowing. The shuttle drifted silently above the surface, cloaked against scans, alone in orbit. He sat in the corner, reviewing notes on his tablet, but his eyes kept flicking toward the figure on the bed. He hadn't just made a medical decision. He had chosen a side, and there would be consequences. Calvira didn't sleep. Though her body remained still under the thermal wrap, her mind was alert, watchful. She stared at the ceiling of the medical bay, tracing the cold, metallic seams with her eyes. The ceiling wasn't made for warriors. It was made for machines. Silent, sterile, the kind of silence that felt too safe, too human. She could still feel the phantom pain, ghost signals where her legs should have moved, now replaced by numb pressure. She didn't know which was worse, the absence of movement or the knowledge that it might be permanent. She turned her head slightly. Adrian Voss sat across the room at a console, shoulders tense, reviewing scans on a dimly lit hollow display. His uniform was plain, but functional. His hands were clean, steady, and efficient. But his face revealed everything else. Guilt, frustration, fatigue. "You're not military," she said, her voice dry but firm. Adrian looked up. "Not anymore." "Then why risk your life for a zero warden?" He held her gaze for a moment, then leaned forward, resting his elbows on the console. "I read your combat logs. You were on the Eastern Front. Elite recon. Your name came up in reports about the siege of Varney's Ridge." She didn't respond. "I was there too," Adrian continued. "Not in a fight. I was stationed at a field hospital 10, clicks behind the lines. I treated your wounded. Some of them talked about you like you were invincible." "I was," she said flatly, "until your kind turned the sky into fire." Adrian didn't flinch. That fire came from both sides. A long silence stretched between them. Calvira's fingers twitched against the edge of the blanket. "What is this place?" "An old med satellite. Independent. abandoned during the evacuation. I reactivated it for border duty. No crew, just me and a few drones. You brought me here. Alone. I couldn't risk a hospital. You'd be reported the moment your DNA hit their registry. She studied him again, closer now. He wasn't just a doctor. There was something heavier behind his eyes. Not arrogance. Not pity. Just quiet resolve. You said I won't walk again. Not without nerve regeneration and mechanical augmentation, he answered. Which you won't get from your people. They already gave up on you. You assume too much. I'm assuming based on the fact they left you crushed beneath your own command bunker, with a clean, targeted plasma shot through your spine. Calvira looked away. Adrian stood, walked over to her bedside, and adjusted the scanner's alignment. We don't have much time. Someone's going to notice that my ship diverted course. This place is shielded, but not invisible. Then why not leave me? You could have turned back before they saw you. I thought about it. Her brow lifted slightly. But when I saw you under that wreckage, it stopped being hypothetical. You humans always act like emotion is a virtue, she said quietly. Like pity is power. This isn't pity, Adrian replied. This is choice. She didn't speak after that. Adrian returned to the console and opened a neural repair schematic. He zoomed in on the damaged sections of her spinal cord. Scar tissue was already forming around fused bone fragments. If left untreated, she'd be fully immobilized within days. He tapped the comm link. Med-drone, prepare a level 3 stim platform and adjust for zero physiology. I need maximum nerve mapping. The drone chirped in response and rolled into position beside her bed. Calvira's eyes followed it, then turned to Adrian. You plan to rebuild me, piece by piece. She narrowed her eyes. You know what happens to humans who alter Zero Warriors? I do. And you know what happens to a warden who accepts it? I do. The room fell quiet again, save for the soft hum of the med systems. Then, in a low voice, Calvira asked something unexpected. Why did you leave the war? Adrian paused. He didn't answer right away. He closed the terminal, leaned against the edge of the table, and crossed his arms. I stayed behind after a base was hit. Everyone else pulled out. I kept treating civilians. One of them died in my arms. Some kid, couldn't have been more than 12. A soldier from your side walked in, looked me in the eye, and let me live. He looked at her. That's why I'm here now. It's balance. Calvira stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. You're a fool, she said quietly. Maybe. He turned back toward the prep station, but before he could speak again, the outer alarm chimed. A red indicator pulsed on the screen, proximity alert. Small, cloaked craft entering range. Not military, not human. Adrian swore under his breath. Calvira's eyes snapped toward him. They found me. He moved quickly to the panel, isolating the signal. One vessel. No ID tag. Close. They're scanning. Passive. It's a scout, she said. Testing for survivors. Or deserters. Adrian activated the cloaking field again and adjusted power output. If they detect a power spike from a neural stim platform, they'll come straight here. Calvira's tone shifted, calm but sharp. Then you'll have to choose again. Adrian looked at her. This time, there was no hesitation in his voice. Already did. He disabled all non-essential systems and dimmed the lights to emergency mode. The entire station fell into silence, just a faint breathing of two people surrounded by the aftermath of war. Calvira lay motionless, her thoughts racing. He was risking everything for her. No tribe, no debt, no blood oath, just choice. And for the first time in her life, that made her feel something she couldn't name. Not yet, but was beginning. The cloaked Zero Scout vessel lingered for 37 minutes. Inside the medical station, neither of them spoke. The lights remained low, every screen dimmed to minimum power. Adrian sat motionless by the diagnostic panel, one hand resting near the emergency purge switch, his ears tuned to the faint hum of the life support system. Calvira lay still under the thermal wrap, her eyes open but unfocused, as if counting the seconds in her head. Eventually, the threat passed. The proximity alert went dark. The vessel was gone. Adrian stood slowly and exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. They didn't get a trace. We're clear for now. Kael'Vira turned her head slightly. They'll return. Zero search patterns always double back. We'll deal with that when it happens. Adrian powered the console back on and checked the timeline. The regenerative stim procedure had been delayed. The longer they waited, the harder her recovery would become. Her muscles had already begun to atrophy below the waist. She wasn't in critical danger yet, but within 2 weeks, secondary infections could start, especially with Zero physiology adapting so differently to human meds. He prepared the injection series and turned toward her. You'll feel a pulse through your spine. Then your sensory nerves will start lighting up. If it hurts too much, tell me. She scoffed faintly. Pain doesn't concern me. He didn't respond. He placed the neural contact pad at the base of her neck, and the device emitted a soft tone. The stimulator activated. Almost immediately, Kael'Vira's back arched slightly, and her jaw tightened. Her fingers trembled for the first time since they met. She didn't cry out, but Adrian could see the strain in every line of her face. He kept monitoring her vitals, blood pressure rising, muscle response returning incrementally. Small signs, but real ones. She closed her eyes for a moment. It feels like something is digging through my spine. That's the synaptic bridge reactivating. Your body's trying to remember how to talk to itself. I was never trained for this kind of weakness, she said. Zero children are conditioned to resist dependency. Adrian leaned back slightly. That sounds miserable. She opened her eyes again and stared at the ceiling. It creates strength. Our warriors are shaped early. Failure is isolated, removed. And yet, Adrian said, you're still here. She gave him a look. Don't mistake survival for purpose. Adrian paused, then changed the subject. Why were you at the front lines? A warden of your rank would normally command from orbit. A long silence followed. At first, he thought she might ignore the question, but finally she spoke. I requested frontline duty, she said flatly. I disobeyed the council. I disagreed with our withdrawal strategy. I believed we were abandoning critical territory to your forces. He raised an eyebrow. So, your own people shot you in the back? Not officially. It was a mistaken orbital strike, right after my command post broadcast a direct refusal to retreat. Adrian processed that. So, but you were betrayed. She didn't confirm it. She didn't need to. That's why they left you, he said quietly. You were no longer convenient. Her face was unreadable. In the zero chain, disobedience dissolves protection. Adrian finished calibrating the stim system for phase 2. Then you're free of them now. That's not how it works, she replied. Even in disgrace, I'm marked. They'll want to ensure I'm dead. They won't find you here. They will. Eventually. Adrian glanced at the cloaking array monitor. Then we use the time we have. He returned to her side and began the next series of injections. They worked in silence for the next 2 hours. Kael'Vira endured the pain without complaint. But Adrian noticed the tension in her shoulders loosen, her breathing deepen. Her body was beginning to adjust to the treatment. Her temperature normalized. Skin tone returned to baseline. Between calibrations, Adrian took a short break, grabbed a hydration pack, and leaned against the wall. The adrenaline was wearing off. Fatigue settled into his limbs like lead. He looked over at her again. Do Zero warriors ever rest? Kael'Vira blinked. We cycle into meditative stasis. That's not rest. That's maintenance. She considered that for a moment. Rest is a weakness in our culture. Maybe that's your problem, he said, without sarcasm. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. You're too honest for your own safety, she said, especially around someone who could still kill you. Adrian shrugged. You're not going to kill me. Why not? Because you're not like them anymore. Her eyes narrowed. What makes you so sure? He stepped closer, crossed his arms. Because the person you were before would have never let herself be saved. Another silence passed between them, heavier than before. Then she looked away. Not in shame, not in anger, in thought. I'm not sure what I am anymore, she admitted quietly. For the first time, her voice carried something he hadn't heard before. Not defiance, not pride, uncertainty. Adrian looked at her, really looked, and something inside him shifted. She wasn't a threat. She wasn't a patient. She was someone who'd been broken by the very system she once defended without question. And now she was lying in a stranger's care, stripped of rank, power, and identity. He knew that kind of fall. "We'll figure out," he said. Her gaze met his again. Steady. Searching. He nodded once. "Yeah." Outside the satellite, the void of space drifted cold and silent. But inside, the silence between them was no longer empty. Adrian adjusted the med station lighting to a soft glow. The sterile blue had begun to irritate Calvira's vision during recovery. She hadn't complained, she never did, but her eyes squinted against it every time the scanner cycled. Now, the room had a calm, ambient tone. Not comforting exactly, but less cold. He noted the change in her facial response almost immediately. Her tension dropped. Muscles in her neck relaxed. Small improvements mattered. Calvira sat upright now, propped up with assistive support. The neural stimulator cables were still threaded into the base of her spine, but she was gaining back fine motor control in her hands. She tested her grip every morning. No announcement, no comment, just quiet repetitions. Today, she managed to close her left fist completely. Adrian watched from the side without interrupting. He knew her pride was intact. She didn't want encouragement. She wanted results. He moved to the console, pulled up a restricted channel, and ran a sweep of nearby traffic lanes. Nothing flagged yet, but one stray ping had caught his attention. A zero communications burst, low band, roughly 12 hours old. It wasn't military grade, likely a merchant relay, but it meant only one thing. Zero patrols were getting closer to this sector. He kept that part to himself for now. Behind him, Calvira spoke. "You check the scanner more often than you check on me. I know your vitals by heart at this point," he replied. "Still, you're watching for them." "I'm watching for anything." She reached slowly for the cup beside her tray, managing to lift it halfway before her hand trembled. Adrian stepped forward instinctively, but she shook her head. "I can do it." He stopped, arms relaxed at his sides. "I believe you." She drank, then set the cup down with deliberate care. Her voice was steadier now. "How long until I can walk?" "Maybe 2 weeks until you can stand. A month, maybe more, before you can control every movement. Your spinal responses are rebuilding from nothing. It's not linear. I don't have a month." "I know." That was the unspoken truth hanging between them now. The more progress she made, the more dangerous it became for both of them. Calvira wasn't just a wounded soldier. She was a political liability. If Zero High Command learned she was alive and recovering with human aid, they'd see it as betrayal. Not just hers, but Adrian's. Any diplomatic immunity would disappear. And yet, she didn't seem afraid. Not of death, not of being hunted. But Adrian had learned by now, fear wasn't the same for people like her. It didn't scream. It whispered. It showed up in the way she double-checked the security field before sleeping, and how she memorized the room's escape routes, and how she never turned her back to the door. "What are you going to do?" Adrian asked, "when you can move again?" Calvira's expression didn't change. "Finish what I started," which was expose the betrayal that left my company to die. Hold my command responsible. That'll put a target on your head. I already have one." He studied her carefully. "Do you know what you're walking back into?" "Yes," she said flatly. Adrian nodded, then turned back to the scanner. "Then I guess I should speed up the treatment." Before she could answer, the ship's internal comms crackled. A soft but urgent chime rang out. Incoming signal. Not from deep space. From orbit. Adrian opened the channel on a secured line. Static filled the first few seconds, then a modulated voice cut through. "This is Sentry Vessel Telenar to unauthorized satellite 4-9 Bravo. Identify and declare purpose." Calvira immediately stiffened in her bed. Her eyes locked onto the console. Adrian tapped mute. "That's not a patrol," she said quietly. "It's a diplomatic ship." "You're sure?" "I recognize the transponder class. They don't fire first. They ask questions. That means they're searching for confirmation. They suspect something." Adrian made a decision fast. He returned to her bedside, pulled back the blanket, and looked at the main junction point on her spinal stim port. "I have to move you." "Where?" "Maintenance chamber, sublevel 2. There's no biometric scan there, and it's not on the primary life support grid. If they force entry, They'll only see me. I can't walk. I know. I'll carry you. She hesitated for only a moment, then gave a tight nod. Adrian moved quickly. He disconnected the stem cables, paused just long enough to check for pain, then slipped his arms beneath her body. She was light but tense. Her breathing remained even. She said nothing, didn't complain. She held onto his shoulder with just enough grip to steady herself. The corridor outside the med bay was narrow, filled with exposed conduits and flickering overhead lights. The station was old, never designed for stealth, never meant to house anyone long-term. But it was quiet, and for now, it was still hidden. They reached the sublevel. Adrian opened the access hatch, ducked under a rusted bulkhead, and lowered her onto the makeshift cot he'd prepared earlier for emergencies. "Keep still," he said. No movement. No sound. Calvira looked up at him. Her voice was low. "If they capture you, say I forced you." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Don't insult me." She didn't argue. He shut the hatch, returned to the main deck, and activated comms again. "This is Satellite 4-9, Bravo," he said calmly. "I'm a civilian medical contractor. Independent license. Station reactivated for emergency research. No passengers. No contact with planetary surface." A pause. Then the reply came. "We're aware of unsanctioned atmospheric entry from your vessel 4 days ago. Send your logs. We will board for verification." Adrian tapped in a pre-coded falsified log. Just enough detail to look real, not enough to invite further inquiry. Then he unlocked the airlock. As the docking clamps engaged and the shuttle trembled slightly from the connection, Adrian breathed slowly through his nose. He had 15 minutes, maybe 20. He needed a plan, and he needed to keep them from going anywhere near sublevel 2. For Calvira, for himself, and for the line he had now fully crossed. There was no going back. Adrian opened the main access hatch just as the Zero diplomatic boarding team stepped into the corridor. There were 3 of them, 2 guards in ceremonial armor, polished and layered for intimidation rather than combat efficiency, and a lead envoy in a dark crimson travel robe, draped with gold-trimmed authority seals. The envoy's eyes immediately swept the room. Tall, bald, with a sharp, almost surgical gaze. No emotion, just calculation. "I am Envoy Tryan of the Zero Concord," he said. His translator implant activated a heartbeat later, rendering the words in crisp, neutral standard. "You are unauthorized within a restricted recovery zone. This facility was decommissioned." Adrian met his gaze calmly. "My license grants me emergency authority in disputed territories for non-combat medical purposes." Tryan stepped inside without permission. The guards followed, scanning the room with handheld devices. "And yet your ship's entry vector indicates a manual descent. No clearance codes were submitted. No distress call issued. That constitutes independent deviation, typically a cover for smuggling or evasion." "I'm not hiding anyone," Adrian replied evenly. "I had a malfunction on approach. I landed, recovered system stability, and resumed research. I've been running diagnostics and salvage while off the grid." Tryan stopped at the medbay doorway and studied the console. "What exactly are you researching?" "Zero physiology," Adrian said without hesitation. "The outer colonies are seeing increasing cases of neuroregenerative failures. I'm comparing old military data to see if Zero adaptive biology holds any treatment potential. Nothing classified. No survivors on board." The envoy gave him a long, unreadable look. Then he nodded toward one of the guards. "Scan the lower levels." Adrian's pulse spiked, but he didn't show it. The guard moved toward the stairwell. "I wouldn't," Adrian said firmly. Both guards froze. Tryan turned toward him slowly. "That level is sealed for radiation containment. Half the equipment down there is unshielded, and the filters are off. You'll contaminate your armor. In this station, within minutes." Tryan said nothing for a full 5 seconds. Then he gestured, and the guard stopped. "Very well," he said. "I will not risk exposure over an empty satellite." He moved back toward Adrian and stood closer this time. "But if you are lying, human, you will not be warned again." Adrian didn't blink. "I'm aware." Tryan studied him another second, then turned away. The entire inspection lasted 9 minutes. When they left, Adrian locked the hatch behind them and waited until the docking clamps released and the ship's signature disappeared from local scans. Only then did he let out the breath he had been holding. He returned to the sublevel immediately. Calvira was still on the cot, propped up slightly, eyes open. She hadn't moved an inch. "You kept them out," she said. It wasn't a question. He knelt beside her, checked her vitals. "Barely. They'll be back," she said. Zero envoys always double back after 15 rotations. "Then we have 15 days. She studied him. "You lied well. I've had practice." Adrian helped her back into the chair and reconnected the stem cables. She winced slightly, but said nothing. As the device reactivated, he pulled up her latest scan. "Motor signals are coming back stronger," he said. "You might be standing by day 10. Walking, maybe before day 15, if we push." "I want to push." He looked at her. "You realize what that means?" She nodded. "I'm not going back to lie in a bed while my enemies rewrite my death." He sat on the floor beside her chair. "You're not just trying to survive," he said. "You want to make them pay." "Yes." Adrian rubbed his hand across his jaw. "What you're planning, it's not a recovery. It's a campaign. I never asked for your permission. I'm not offering it. I'm just trying to keep you alive long enough to get there." She turned her head toward him. "Then stop resting. Start preparing." For the first time since a rescue, Adrian saw something unmistakable in her expression. Not pain, not pride. Determination. Calvira Velrain had come back to life. Not as a fallen warden, as a threat. And Adrian, whether he admitted it or not, was already part of her war. The station lights were dimmed to red as a precaution. Any sudden flare in the power grid could be detected from orbit. Everything had to run on minimal systems. The satellite felt like a tomb now, silent, low pressure, and tense with purpose. Calvira stood for the first time in 10 days. Her legs trembled, knees locked, arms braced against the wall-mounted support frame. The exoskeletal stabilizers Adrian had built from salvaged drone parts ran along the outside of her thighs, wired directly into the neural stimulators embedded along her spine. She didn't look triumphant. She looked focused, sweat running down her temples, jaw tight, eyes fixed forward. Every second on her feet was earned, not given. "Don't move yet," Adrian said, monitoring her posture from the console. "Your stabilizers need to sync with your inner rotation. Let them adjust to your weight." "They already have. You'll collapse if you rush it." Calvira didn't answer. She took one step forward. The sound of her boot touching the metal floor was small, but in that moment, it was everything. She took another, then another. Adrian watched her until she completed a full, shaky lap around the medical bay perimeter. She never asked for help, never needed to. The room was silent except for her breath and the soft hiss of the assist units keeping her balance. When she stopped, she turned to him. "I'm ready." "You're walking," Adrian said, "but not ready. You have no endurance. You can't fight like this." "I'm not going to fight in here." Adrian stepped toward her, frustration rising. "Kale, this is bigger than just movement. The moment you leave this station, you're not coming back. You'll be tracked, hunted, probably betrayed again." She met his gaze. "Then I'll be prepared this time." He stared at her, searching for something. Hesitation, fear, second thoughts, but there were none. Just resolve. "You really think you can face them alone?" "I won't be alone." That stopped him. Adrian folded his arms. "You want me to come with you?" "You already did." He didn't respond right away. He felt the weight of that implication settle into his chest. She wasn't wrong. He had already crossed the line with her, saving her, lying for her, fighting off inspectors. And somewhere along the way, he'd stopped seeing her as an enemy. He saw her now as something else. She sat down slowly, legs shaking slightly. "My former commanding officer, High Warden Severix. He'll be at the Frontier Conclave in 2 days. He's the one who issued the retreat order, the one who denied the recovery mission. I have proof now, battle logs, comm signatures, tactical feeds. Everything I salvaged before they cut my link." Adrian frowned. "You've had this data the whole time?" "I memorized the backup encryption. You can access it through my neural band, but only once I'm stabilized." He stepped toward her. And you want to broadcast it publicly? To the Zero War Council, with confirmation from a neutral witness. And that's me. She nodded once. A human witness. One who saved a disgraced warrior. It will force the council to respond. It's not justice, but it's pressure. Adrian rubbed the back of his neck. They'll target me too. They already do. Another silence fell between them. Then, Adrian turned toward the armory locker. He keyed it open, pulled out a reinforced medical case, and set it down with a quiet thud. Inside were 6 auto-injectors, a low-profile sidearm, a compact transmitter, and 2 days of ration packs. You'll need these. Calvira stared at the kit, then back at him. You're coming. I'm not letting you walk into a death sentence alone. She stood again, more steadily this time. Then we leave now. Adrian checked the outer sensors. The Zero Envoy vessel had not returned, but a relay beacon had activated 2 hours ago on the outer rim. Someone had passed word along. Their time was up. He turned back to her. Then we do this right. We move under cloak. Low orbit until we reach the fringe. You'll need to ride strapped in. Your nervous system still isn't calibrated to turbulence. She didn't argue. For once, she let him lead. They packed in silence. He activated the station's auto-destruct failsafe, set to trigger if any unauthorized scan breached the perimeter. No one would find what they left behind. As they entered the shuttle, Calvira paused at the threshold. She turned back, looking at the med bay. The cables, the cot, the old drone parts reconfigured to help her walk. This place changed me, she said softly. Adrian didn't look back. It saved you. She turned toward him. No, you did. And she stepped inside. The hatch sealed. The shuttle powered up. Adrian set the course for the outer conclave sector. They were out of time. What started as a rescue had become something far more dangerous. Now it was a reckoning. The shuttle emerged from the shadow side of Darcy's 3, slipping past comm satellites and abandoned defense grids with the cloak field barely holding. Adrian piloted manually, fingers tense over the controls. The Zero Conclave station came into view, floating like a dagger above the planetary orbit, its spires lit in pulsing crimson and white. Inside the passenger bay, Calvira stood without assistance. The exo support frame had been removed. Her balance was stable now, gait confident, spine stiffened by a neural brace Adrian had fine-tuned for both mobility and endurance. She wore a simple black field uniform, zero cut, but stripped of rank and insignia. Not a warrior, not a warden, just Calvira. She watched the approach in silence, arms crossed, her jaw set. Adrian stepped in beside her. You don't have to do this, he said. His voice was low but steady. Yes, I do, she replied. Not for revenge, for truth. He nodded once. Then I'll be right behind you. The landing bay welcomed them with procedural indifference. 2 Zero guards met the ramp with scanners. Calvira stepped out first, her presence freezing the soldiers mid-scan. They recognized her immediately. Adrian followed, carrying the sealed data unit, his ID openly displayed. The guards didn't stop them. The silence in the corridor said more than words. She wasn't expected, but she would not be denied. Inside the Grand Conclave Hall, the 12 counselors of the Zero Order sat on a raised platform, cold and distant, flanked by military officers and diplomatic aides. High Warden Severix stood among them, expression carefully neutral. The moment Calvira entered, the murmur of the hall ceased. She walked to the center floor, chin high, legs steady. Her voice was clear when she spoke. I was declared dead, not because I fell in battle, but because I refused to abandon my post during a retreat I knew was dishonorable. The silence deepened. She turned slightly, nodding at Adrian. He stepped forward, connected the neural recorder to the datapad, and uploaded the encrypted files, combat logs, voice recordings, satellite pings, mission timestamps. Each one backed her claim. The feed projected above them all. Voices played. Orders denied. Her last recorded call for support. Her command silence in response. Then, the unambiguous orbital strike, targeting her exact position after her refusal to comply. A counselor leaned forward. This is authentic, Adrian answered, calm but firm. Verified through 5 independent layers. and I witnessed her recovery firsthand. She's not just a survivor. She's the truth your military tried to bury. Murmurs broke out. Even Severix showed the first crack in his composure. But Kael'Vira wasn't done. I don't seek reinstatement, she said. I don't seek rank. I seek the truth to be seen, and those who abandon their duty to be known for what they are. The chamber was still. Severix stepped forward slowly. You were warned. You chose rebellion over order. I chose duty over cowardice, she replied, unblinking. And I survived. A long pause. Then one of the counselors stood. We will convene privately. This accusation demands full review. Until then, Kael'Vira is under provisional protection. No charges. No pursuit. Adrian's shoulders relaxed slightly, but Kael'Vira stayed still. Only after the council adjourned did she turn to him. It worked. He smiled faintly. You did it. No, we did. They returned to the shuttle in silence. The corridor now watched them with respect instead of suspicion. The guards saluted her. Not out of duty, but out of recognition. Back on board, Adrian sat at the helm. He looked at her reflection in the cockpit glass. You could stay, he said. Rebuild. Be something new to your people. Kael'Vira stepped up beside him, resting a hand lightly on the console. Or I could leave with you and be something new to myself. Adrian turned toward her. For the first time since the rescue, there was no shield between them. No duty. No walls. Just a choice. I don't have a plan, he said. I don't need one, she replied. They stood there a moment longer before he reached across the console and keyed in the exit sequence. Engines roared to life. The shuttle rose from the hangar, broke orbit, and disappeared into deep space. No longer fugitives. No longer alone. Just two survivors moving forward together and finally free.